Welcome to the Responsibilities module of the RSO Required Leader Training. In this module, we'll cover issues related to risk management, the Office of Student Conduct, Title IX, and the Clery Act. Early in the planning process, ask yourself this important question. Does this event, program, activity, or decision fit the mission and values of my organization and of UNLV? This fundamental question should guide you in the decision-making process as you proceed. If you can't advocate strongly for why your plans fall in line with these missions and values, it's probably time to reevaluate and develop a new plan that does. Let's go ahead and get started, first with risk management. What is risk management? Risk management is the process of identifying, analyzing, and mitigating potential risks. RSOs need to be aware of the potential risks of the plans and decisions that the organization makes and work to develop strategies to mitigate those risks. Risks can vary in type and scope, but must be accounted for in all of your planning processes. Risk management is important because the safety of your members, the UNLV community, and all you interact with is of the utmost importance. The key is to be proactive. Make sure that you're thinking ahead and putting in place all of the safety measures that you can to ensure your event or activity goes as smoothly and safely as possible. When considering the potential risks associated with your events, programs, or activities, there are several factors that can inherently increase the likelihood of harm or loss and should be strongly considered in your decision-making process. Some of these factors include traveling, the consumption of alcohol by participants, events with physical activities such as playing a sport, or the use of a dunk tank, off-campus events, contracts or agreements with third-party vendors, the behavior of organization members at parties or social events, and fire and other life safety issues. Let's take a moment to walk through the steps of identifying and planning for risks. When planning an event or activity, you want to first identify any activities or behaviors that may have risks associated with them. Say you're planning a game or activity. What are all of the things that could go right, but also what could go wrong? How could someone misuse the equipment? How could a participant potentially be harmed? Physical risks would include those affecting the safety of one's body, such as injury or food poisoning. Reputational risks are those that result in negative publicity for your organization or UNLV. Emotional risks involve the potential of your event to cause emotional distress, such as harassment, fear, anxiety, discrimination, or emotional trauma. Financial risks are those that negatively impact the fiscal stability of the organization, UNLV, or others. Facilities risks are those that could cause property damage or loss or may prevent your event from being held, like rain or wind. Sustainability risks are those that pose a threat to the environment at large. Next, you'll want to assess who might be harmed and how. This would include not only the individuals participating or those in the surrounding area, but others that are not even at your event. Next step is to evaluate the risks. How likely is it that the hazard will occur, and how severe will the consequence be? This will help you prioritize as you move into the next phase of developing and implementing a mitigation plan. Later in this module, we'll provide examples of how to do this. Finally, you'll want to assess after the fact. How did the event go? What went well? How could things have gone better? What didn't you account for? What did you learn from the experience that can be passed on to new student leaders in the future? How can you improve your safety planning process? A risk management matrix is a tool that allows you to assess the risk of an activity or program by indexing the severity of harm against the likelihood that it may occur. In a perfect world, you would eliminate all risk when planning your programs and events, but that isn't always possible. The goal of a risk management matrix is to help you identify risks and to maintain an acceptable level of risk. The top of this matrix asks you to identify the likelihood that negative outcomes may occur. The left side of the matrix then asks you to determine the severity or potential outcomes. As you identify each element of your planned program, event, or activity, use the matrix to identify the level of associated risks as either low, medium, high, or extremely high. For example, based on this chart, you identify that the likelihood of a negative outcome at your event falls in the seldom category and the severity of potential negative outcomes is marginal. Then your level of risk as per the matrix is medium. If, however, you identify that the potential likelihood was frequent while the potential negative outcomes were critical, the matrix identifies your risk as extremely high. High-risk activities should be avoided whenever possible. For medium and low-risk programs and events, methods to mitigate those risks should be identified and implemented. Next, you'll need to develop a risk mitigation plan. Step 1 will be to determine all program elements of your event. What will happen at the event? What activities will occur? Who will participate? Is a third-party vendor providing a rental item or service? Be as specific as possible to identify all elements of your program. Step 2 is to honestly assess the potential risks associated with each of these program elements. As mentioned earlier, think of all the negative potential outcomes or effects that could result from those program elements. Step 3 is to use the risk matrix to identify the potential risk impact for each element as low, medium, high, or extremely high. And the fourth and most important step is to identify all of the methods and safety protocols you plan to put in place to reduce the potential risk of each program element. On this slide, I'm showing you a table you should use to write out your risk mitigation plan. Add each program element as a row on the table, where you will then list out the associated risks, impact as identified by the risk matrix, and the methods you will utilize to reduce those associated risks. As a reminder, all events with associated risks must include the utilization of liability waivers to be signed by all program participants. Let's talk through a risk management case study. Say your organization is planning an outdoor event on the rec center lawn to celebrate the start of the semester. Because the event will take place in a venue that is managed by Student Union and Event Services, referred to moving forward as SUEs, you have been assigned an event coordinator to work with during the planning process and on the day of your event. A student member of your organization plans to DJ the event using sound equipment rented through and set up by SUEs. Additionally, you plan to play lawn games, including cornhole and giant Jenga. You have also worked with a third-party off-campus vendor to secure the use of an inflatable bounce house at the event. Based on this event, let's complete the risk mitigation plan together. On the first row, we list our student DJ as a program element. The SUE's rented sound equipment and a table for the DJ will be placed under a pop-up canopy provided by your organization. What are the potential associated risks? Though you plan to locate the DJ as close as you can to a power outlet, the cords still have to be run a short way through the grass, so there is a risk that someone could trip, fall, and injure themselves on the electrical cords. In addition, pop-up canopies have the potential to lift and blow away in high winds, which could cause injury or mild property damage. Based on the risk matrix, you have identified that the trip hazard of the power cords as well as the risk of the pop-up canopy blowing away in high winds would present a medium level of risk. To reduce these risks, we plan to mitigate those risks by placing the DJ station as close to a power outlet as possible, and then covering the cords that run from the outlet to the sound equipment with cable guards or brightly colored cones. In addition, the RSO plans to provide sandbags to weigh down the legs and feet of the canopy to reduce the possibility it could be picked up by high winds. We have also developed as a backup plan that we will not set up the pop-up canopy if the winds are high the day of the event, or we will take the canopy down if the winds pick up too much. The next element of our program is the inflatable bounce house that is being rented by a third-party off-campus vendor. Individuals who are jumping in the bounce house risk minor injuries such as a sprained ankle. Again, winds could be a factor in this event, which are dangerous with inflatable bounce houses as they can be picked up and blown across the field, posing the risk of more serious injury if someone is inside at the time. The rental is inflated via a small generator, which could also pose the risk of guests inhaling fumes from the gas that powers the generator. Based on the risk management matrix, we identified that the risk of injury from use of the bounce house as well as fume inhalation both pose medium levels of risk. The potential of high winds that blows the bounce house over poses a high risk. To reduce this risk, we plan to follow all safety guidelines provided by the bounce house vendor. Ahead of the event, we will provide a copy of the inflatable vendor's certificate of liability insurance that meets the requirements provided by our SUE's event coordinator. The vendor is required to provide heavy weights for the bounce house to reduce the risk it could blow over. We will also plan to supervise the load-in and setup of the bounce house with our event coordinator on site to ensure the vendor follows the agreed-upon safety protocols. The generator will be placed in an area with open ventilation, and a wide circle of brightly colored cones will be placed around it to ensure participants don't stand too close to the exhaust fumes. Lastly, we identify now that our backup plan, if winds are determined to be high, is to not utilize the bounce house. The next program element on our risk mitigation plan is the outdoor lawn games that include cornhole and giant Jenga. Potential risks include the possibility that the Jenga pieces fall on a participant or that someone could be hit by a beanbag from the cornhole game. Based on the risk management matrix, we identify the risk of these to be low. To mitigate this risk, we plan to place these games on an area of the field that doesn't encourage guests to walk through it to get to other program elements. The last program element on our risk mitigation plan is related to the heat early in the fall semester, which we note could cause heat exhaustion or dehydration. Based on the risk management matrix, we identify the level of risk to be low. Plans to reduce risk include providing water to attendees. In addition, organizers will keep note of anyone who looks like they may be feeling the negative effects from the heat and bring them inside to sit down in the SRWC lobby until they cool off. Note that because we have identified that this event does have several elements where risk exists, all participants are required to sign a liability waiver. Once signed, each attendee will be given a wristband so event organizers can identify that they have completed the required waiver. We'll come back to liability waivers in more detail soon. So, it's the day of your event. You're all set up and ready to go. 30 minutes before the event is scheduled to start, you notice that the weather has turned. The sun that was shining has now disappeared, clouds have rolled in, and the wind is gusting very strong, maybe even as much as 30 or 40 miles an hour. The vendor already set up your bounce house, as per all the safety regulations, and you'll be obligated to pay for it whether you use it or not. Now, here's the question. Should you continue with your plans and allow participants to use that bounce house? Again, think about our earlier point of identifying risk not only beforehand, but throughout the full event. What may have seemed like a smart idea early on, is it still a good idea? The answer to that question is no. The change in weather means that the risk is now too high to continue with the original plan. Someone could be seriously injured if that bounce house were to be picked up and rolled across the lawn because of the strength of the wind. Sometimes being the leader in your student organization includes making difficult decisions. It's possible that everyone knows the bounce house is going to be there, they're excited to utilize it, and you know you're going to pay for it whether you use it or not. But the best choice you can make as a leader in that moment is the difficult one, not to utilize it. What should you do if an incident occurs at one of your events? First and foremost, take immediate care of any injuries, medical issues, or other safety emergencies. This could range from getting iced for a participant who rolled their ankle to calling 911 for a life-threatening medical incident, fire, or auto accident. If the incident occurs on campus, you can reach UNLV Police Services emergency line at 702-895-3669. If the incident occurs off campus, then you should call 911 for emergencies. The next step will be to document the incident in as much detail as possible. Create a written record of exactly what happened. Be sure to get accounts for all who were involved. Document the incidents with pictures and/or videos when appropriate. In addition, the incident should be reported to UNLV. If it is during business hours, you can contact the Student Involvement and Activities Office at 702-895-5631. Outside of business hours, contact the UNLV Police Services non-emergency line at 702-895-3668. Be prepared to provide a detailed account when reporting. Liability waivers. If you identify any possible risk associated with your event, activity, or behavior, all participants must complete a liability waiver. RSOs must use the standard template provided by UNLV Risk Management and General Counsel. Templates are available on the Student Involvement and Activities website at unlv.edu/sia/student-orgs/registration/understanding-risk-management. RSO leaders are expected to store signed liability waivers for 4 years post-event or activity, should they be needed after the event. Some common activities that should always utilize liability waivers: anything that includes off-campus travel, rental of inflatables, physical activities or games, handling any chemicals, etc. Really think through the planned activities for your event or program. If potential risks were identified, then anyone who will participate in that activity must complete a liability waiver before engaging in the activity. As per the RSO manual, student organizations are considered separate entities from UNLV and may not act as an extension of the institution. Student organizations do not have the authority to represent UNLV and are not able to sign contracts with off-campus venues or third-party vendors on behalf of the institution. Faculty and staff advisors are also not permitted to sign on any contracts or agreements as representatives of UNLV on behalf of your organization. Should a member of your organization choose to enter into a contract or agreement as a representative of your RSO, any individual who signs that contract may be held personally responsible for the contract, indebtedness, obligations, and liabilities. This means that the responsibility to uphold the contract, pay for the agreement, and assume any liability falls on the organization and the students who sign the contract and not on UNLV. Students who do choose to enter into these agreements are advised to do so under extreme caution and care for the written content of the agreement. If your RSO is part of a national organization, it is recommended that you consult with representatives from the national level before entering into any agreement on behalf of the organization. In this next section, we'll talk about the Office of Student Conduct. The Office of Student Conduct, also known as OSC, promotes the awareness of student and student organization rights and responsibilities. The Student Conduct Code can be found online at unlv.edu/studentconduct. It's important to note that anywhere in the Student Conduct Code where it refers to a student, it actually reads student/student organization. That means that all of the rights and responsibilities an individual student has listed in the code also applies to your student organization. Any student or student organization may be held accountable for the actions of any of its members if the violation of the code is in any way related to the organization. Organization misconduct does not need to be officially sanctioned by the entire membership to be considered grounds for possible conduct action towards the organization. Remember that the actions of even one member can have an impact on your entire organization if they're acting on behalf of your organization. The University of Nevada, Las Vegas defines hazing as any method of initiation into a group performed by someone on or off campus that endangers another individual, destroys or removes public or private property, or subjects someone to mental or physical requirements, requests, or obligations that endanger another individual, could cause discomfort, pain, fright, disgrace, injury, or that is personally degrading, or violates any federal, state, local law, or university policy. An instance only has to meet one of these definitions in order to be considered hazing, not all of them, just one. Also, the willingness to participate in hazing does not make the conduct acceptable or legitimate. The line of what does and doesn't constitute hazing can sometimes be hard to discern. If you're not sure if something is considered hazing, start by asking yourself these questions. Would I still participate if my family were watching? Am I expected to keep these activities a secret? Is this illegal or does it violate UNLV policies? Does this violate my personal values or those of the organization and/or UNLV? Is this causing emotional or physical distress to myself or others? Would we worry about the consequences if a UNLV administrator saw what is happening? Often just the pause and need to ask yourself these questions may be what tells you that what's happening isn't right. Hazing occurs on a spectrum that is centered around two principles: recognition and frequency, and three actions: intimidation, harassment, and violence. There is a wide range of behaviors that fit the definition of hazing. For this reason, it can often go unrecognized and unreported. The spectrum of hazing illustrates the reality that the most violent forms of hazing, such as the forced consumption of alcohol, drugs, or vile substances or beatings, occur at a lower frequency but are highly recognized, where intimidation hazing, such as demeaning names or expecting items to always be in one's possession, or harassment hazing, which includes verbal abuse or sleep deprivation, happen far more frequently but are often not recognized as harmful hazing behaviors. Increasing the awareness of these low recognition, high frequency intimidation and harassment forms of hazing can reduce our community's tolerance of such behaviors and shift the culture towards more positive, less harmful ways of welcoming new members into your organization and engaging with existing members. The Office of Student Conduct is located in the Central Desert Complex, CDC Building 1, Room 118. Remember that OSC is here as a resource for you. They can come to your organization to present and help you better understand responsible decision making. Feel free to reach out to them if you would like to schedule a training or workshop. We also want to encourage you to remember that if something your organization is engaging in gives you reason to pause, listen to your instincts. If you're not sure if the activity represents a positive choice for your organization, don't hesitate to reference the conduct code or reach out to the Office of Student Conduct. Information about OSC can be found online at unlv.edu/studentconduct. They can be reached by phone at 702-895-2308 or by email at officeofstudentconduct@unlv.edu. Next, we're going to talk about the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity and Education Act, also known as Title IX. What is Title IX? Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972 states that, quote, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, end quote. Title IX provides gender equity in athletics, prohibits gender-based discrimination of students and employees of the university, and prohibits sex discrimination, including sexual harassment and sexual violence. What does that mean here at UNLV? UNLV prohibits gender discrimination in any form, including sexual harassment of or violence towards students, faculty, or staff. UNLV requires all students, faculty, and staff to comply with this policy. UNLV has also designated a department to coordinate efforts to comply with Title IX mandates, provide supportive measures, and investigate complaints, known as the Office of Equal Employment and Title IX. They're located in room 553 of BEH, and they can be reached at 702-895-4055 or Title IX Coordinator at unlv.edu. You can also find them online at unlv.edu/compliance. What is considered gender discrimination? Gender discrimination is the unequal or disadvantageous treatment of an individual or group based on their gender, but not necessarily sexual in nature. This includes discrimination based on sex, gender identity, or gender expression. There are many examples of discrimination that are listed here, but the one that we really want to point out is what's bolded: extracurricular activities. Anybody who takes part in a student organization on campus is part of an extracurricular activity and is therefore required to follow the mandates of Title IX. What is sexual harassment? It's defined as unwelcome conduct on the basis of sex that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that effectively denies a person equal access to the institution's education program or activity. It can include, but is not limited to, sexual advances, sexual assaults, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment can be based on an individual's perception of the event in question. This is very important to note. If the conduct is unwelcome and offensive to the person experiencing it, then it can be considered sexual harassment, regardless of whether or not it was intended that way. It doesn't matter if it was only meant to be a joke or if someone didn't intend for someone to be hurt by it. If that individual who has experienced it finds it to be unwelcome and offensive, then it may be considered sexual harassment. What is your responsibility? Everyone on campus is responsible for preventing sexual harassment and ensuring that the organizations you are part of are free from sexual harassment. It's also your responsibility to become informed about what constitutes sexual harassment, as well as bystander interventions to prevent it. We also encourage you to evaluate your own behavior to ensure that you are not engaging in sexual harassment. As a leader in your student organization, it is your responsibility to create an environment where sexual harassment and violence are not tolerated in any form. It is also your duty to report violations on campus when you are aware of them. If you believe that you or another individual on campus have been the victim of sexual harassment, including sexual assault, violence, or other sexual misconduct, or gender discrimination in any form, you are encouraged to report it. There are several ways in which you can report sexual harassment, violence, or misconduct. You can reach out to the Office of Equal Opportunity and Title IX, including filing an online report form available at unlv.edu/compliance. The Office of Student Conduct, Police Services, Housing and Residential Life, the Care Center, Student Involvement and Activities, or any other UNLV faculty or staff member. Note that all UNLV faculty or staff members, excluding those covered by a doctor's privilege or serving as legal counsel, are considered mandatory Title IX reporters. That means if you tell your advisor about something that has occurred, by law, they are required, unless they are covered by a doctor's privilege or legal counsel, to report that back to the university. Should this happen, the university's Title IX coordinator would contact you to offer supportive measures. An important resource for you to know about is the Care Center. The Care Center provides free and confidential support services, holistic healing workshops, campus education, and awareness events for UNLV, NSC, and CSN communities impacted by sexual assault, relationship abuse, family violence, and/or stalking. Programs and services are available to people of all identities and regardless of status. Care advocates can assist in the process of working through feelings, identifying needs, and making decisions. They can be reached at 702-895-0602, or a virtual appointment can be made online at unlv.edu/carecenter. The Care Center is located in SSCA, room 255. Note that services are available even if the event occurred off campus and regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. If you or someone you know has been harmed, please call the Care Line. Next, we're going to discuss the Jean Clery Disclosure of Campus Security Policy and Campus Crime Statistics Act, also known as the Clery Act. What is the Clery Act? Unfortunately, the Clery Act has a pretty sad story associated with it. The Clery Act is named after Jean Clery, who was sexually assaulted and murdered in her dorm room by another student at Lehigh University in 1986. After her death, her parents discovered there was a high rate of violent crime at Lehigh, and that this information was not disclosed to the public. Her parents were adamant that, had Jean known of the crime rate, she would have been more cautious on campus. In response, her parents lobbied Congress to enact legislation. The Clery Act requires institutions of higher education to disclose crime statistics to current and prospective students and employees to ensure that they are informed about campus crimes and to allow them to make more informed decisions. This federal policy mandates the compilation and disclosure of campus crime statistics and requires the collection of information regarding incidents from non-law enforcement agents known as campus security authorities. The Clery Act requires colleges and universities to disclose certain information about campus crimes and security policies. Institutions that fail to meet these requirements can be fined and lose federal funding. As students on campus, you see this through regular email reports of crime statistics on campus, which are available online at unlv.edu/police/crime-log. Publication of the annual security and fire safety report, and timely warnings and emergency alerts regarding crimes or imminent hazards that have occurred on or near campus. Some of the crimes that must be reported include aggravated assault, burglary, homicide, hate crimes, motor vehicle theft, robbery, both forcible and non-forcible sex crime, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, drug and liquor violations, and illegal possessions of weapons. Note that this is not an exhaustive list. A full list of required crimes to be reported can be found on the clerycenter.org website. An incident involving any member of the UNLV community must be reported. When in doubt, we encourage you to report to the university. Let's talk a little more in depth about campus security authorities, which I'll refer to as CSAs. CSAs have a federally mandated responsibility to report any Clery Act offenses to the institution. In addition to campus police and security officials, the law defines CSAs as any individual with significant responsibility for student and campus activities. Under this definition, all of your RSO advisors are considered CSAs and have a mandatory duty to report. As a part of the registration process, all RSO advisors must complete a mandatory online CSA training, as well as complete the advisor agreement form, which acknowledges their role as a CSA. What's your responsibility as an RSO leader? As an officer or a member of your organization, it's important that you lead by setting a strong example of reporting. As a member of the UNLV community, you have a responsibility to your fellow students to make sure that they are aware of any risk of crime based on what has already occurred. Report as soon as you are aware of an alleged crime so a timely warning can be sent to the campus community. Who can you report to? If the person reporting the crime is in immediate danger or harm, call 911 from a campus phone or the UNLV emergency dispatcher at 702-895-3669 from a cell phone. We really want to encourage you to put that phone number into your cell phone and save it. You can call 911 from your cell phone. It will go to Las Vegas Metro, which will then have to transfer the call to the UNLV dispatcher. You will save time, and it will go much faster if you call the UNLV emergency dispatcher directly at the phone number listed here. If you call using the Rebel Safe app, you will be connected directly to the UNLV dispatcher. Other reporting avenues include UNLV Police Services, the Office of Student Conduct, the Office of Equal Employment and Title IX, Housing and Residential Life, the Care Center, Student Involvement Activities, or your RSO advisor. All CSA reports should be forwarded to the UNLV's Clery Compliance Coordinator. Reports can be made online at unlv.edu/police/report, selecting the Campus Security Authority report form link.